Good morning, Sandra.
Good morning, Alicia. How are
This-
you?
I'm well. I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good, good. I love your background there. It
Thank you.
looks a little vintage.
Yeah, I actually took this photo myself. I was in a plane flying home,
Oh,
and then I
nice.
started playing around with the color. I'm like, oh, I bet this would be very cool. It's a black and white. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's a very nice photo. Yeah.
thanks.
I've
That'll
been
be my
seeing them.
third career.
Oh, your third career where, well, I'll tell you, I'm loving this current career of yours and just getting to know you over the years in your contribution in sustainability and designing healthy environments. So welcome everyone for those of you that are tuning in. My name is Alicia Ponce. I am the founder and principal of APMonarch. We are architects and sustainability consultants where we design healthy environments. And today I am joined by Sandra Henry. She is a senior director uh, at Elevate Energy, and she's a senior director at Energy and Sustainability. Sandra she leads the implementation of Elevate Energy's clean energy initiatives. She works with internal and external stakeholders on clean energy access and climate solutions to advance a more equitable and just clean energy future. So I can't wait to talk to you about our subject today, where we will be talking about advancing renewable energy and equity and what exactly does that mean. So welcome, Sandra, again, and let's get started. Renewables.
Thanks, Alicia. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and like I mentioned, I've known you for a couple of years now. I think I met you through the Environmentalists of Color first,
Yeah.
and then through the circles of Illinois Green, you were the chair. What for 2 years was it?
Yeah, chair for 2 years. I've been involved with Illinois Green when it was USGBC Illinois back in, I don't know, 2009 or 10. So
Mhm.
quite some time I've been affiliated with that group. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were also the chief sustainability officer for the city of Chicago. And just recently, you were recognized as a Shiro, right? With US Green Building Council. So
Yeah.
amazing, incredible work that you've been
Thank you.
doing. And all of this, so you mentioned your two careers, right, so far, maybe the third in photography. But so your background is in engineering, right? And
Yeah.
how does that background, how did that bring you on this path of sustainability?
Oh, wow. It's so I guess it's kind of a multidisciplinary story. But for me as an engineer working with buildings and energy systems, it was just kind of a natural progression into working with utilities and helping them advance energy efficiency. And the connection between energy efficiency and carbon is that we're burning dirty coal to generate electricity. So the most effective way to reduce our carbon footprint still is to not generate kilowatt hours. So the most effective strategy is to not generate kilowatt hours. And the best way to do that is to practice energy efficiency. It's the first step toward our progress toward renewable energy. And so I think my engineering background helped me make the connection between systems that use energy like lighting, motors, air conditioning, and to connect that to a carbon drawdown or carbon footprint reduction strategy. And everything's built on that. So once I started looking at energy, um, my interest and passions kind of evolved toward what are the other things that go into sustainability, like materials, I mean, we could, like water, like
Mhm.
recycling and waste, because it's not just one thing. It's a disciplinary, interdisciplinary process for us to get to a sustainable environment.
Yeah, and a lot of it is measuring it, right? Measuring first to understand our usage and or understand what is that we're doing to the environment, right? I know you're
Right.
doing a lot of that as well.
Right. So I spent my early days as a commissioning agent, commissioning new
Mhm.
buildings, which gave me insights into how buildings actually are controlled and work. Um, at, Through my work at ComEd, my last job was managing their new construction program. And the goal of that program was to really help designers and engineers build energy efficient buildings from the ground up, because it's much easier to kind of address that process initially than it is to make a poorly performing building that's already in the market perform better.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is focused on measurement, thinking through like how developing performance requirements for buildings. The key to that is measurement. And those measuring things are expensive, but it really is the key to knowing where we are and getting a baseline so that we can improve our performance over time.
Yeah, the measuring and the tracking is huge in what we do so that it helps us understand and educate, right? For those
Yes,
we are trying to help or those who seek our help in the design world. So that's a main factor.
it
Um,
is. And it's expensive, but I
mhm,
think we have to be thoughtful about how we are able to wrap those costs into how we design our buildings.
mhm. So today's talk is about
Mhm.
renewables, renewable energy and equity. Can you please explain, go into a little about, what that means and your role and the fabulous work that you're working on?
Sure. So let me just think about this for a second. Um, for me, I'll talk about my personal story and
Mhm,
like how this wraps together. I think for me, because as the CSO for the city of Chicago, and just kind of thinking about my experience in Chicago as a citizen and working for utilities, it was very clear that we were leaving a significant portion of our population out of the conversation around sustainability and renewable and energy efficiency and all of those elements that can lead to improved lifestyle, healthy living. And that started me on this pathway to learn more about how we do integrate a broader conversation about renewable energy and energy efficiency. And we'll talk about this later, but I thought about, what is our messaging? Who is our audience? How are they hearing this? How are we approaching, the folks that we want to include in this conversation?
mhm,
What are their priorities? Let's learn more about their goals. So that's kind of how my personal approach was to this.
mhm,
But I had an opportunity to work after I left the city of Chicago with an organization that's focused on delivering those types of services to populations, income qualified, moderate income folks that aren't always benefactors of our efficiency programs.
mhm,
And in that experience, I learned how important it is about understanding their needs and the fact that we may encounter customers that really can't benefit from energy efficiency yet because they have other concerns like health and safety or other issues like that. And so that was an experience that kind of opened my, just expanded my knowledge of what's required to bring everybody to the table. Um, and then when I joined Elevate, I got to really see some of the examples of how Elevate is bringing renewable energy to the communities that we want to serve, the ones that are harder to reach. And so there's a program called Illinois Solar for All that offers programs, low, in, low income community solar programs for nonprofits and public facilities, and also low-income distributed generation. And there's a case study that caught my attention. Probably have seen it. It's about the Dubois family, or Dubois family. I apologize if I'm saying it incorrectly. But this family was able to take advantage of the solar program, and they have solar installed on their home. It's one of the first projects that Elevate has completed. And through that program, they're going to save about $46 a month for the first year under the contract. And the cool thing about the program is they did not have to pay any upfront costs to take advantage of
That's huge.
the
Yeah.
of the benefits. And I think, you know, I don't run that program.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just caveat with that. And I'm also still new to Elevate, so I'm still learning. But the thing that resonated with me is Elevate figured out a model that is replicable and has a low bar for entry for folks that may not have the capital to invest in solar energy. So I think that's a really good story that we should be sharing with other cities and other folks about how, or what's an option for scaling
Mm-hmm.
community solar and giving access to solar energy to folks that may not always have the resources to acquire that energy system.
Mm-hmm. Is that case study available on your website?
It is.
Okay. So
Yeah.
a link to that.
Yep. I'll send you the link. And it's a really simple, cool story. The homeowner found out about the service at her church,
Okay.
which kind of speaks to thinking about how do folks in Black and Brown communities get information. She went to church and found it. And I think, you know, for providers of services, it's important to think about how your target market, or how the communities that you want to serve, consume
Mhm.
information, and where's the best place to go meet them.
Yeah, I mean, it's also another way, if you saw when how you learned about, certain communities maybe not getting this type of resource, it's also a way of measuring and tracking where are the renewable energy resources going, where are they being implemented, right? And so
Yeah.
furthermore, like, what is the public outreach, what is the engagement and public outreach to the communities, right? Because we're all human citizens of this planet, and we should all be able to, realize that it's feasible. And if a program like Illinois Solar for All is available, what is the outreach, right?
Right. Right. And the outreach should be in the communities. And again, I'll caveat with I'm still learning
Right.
Elevate, but I think we have a really solid communications and outreach group that is dialed in to communicating and sharing the information with communities that wouldn't necessarily hear about that from other traditional sources, like, you know, the City of Chicago Sustainability Newsletter, for example, or something like that. I think you really have to go to the people and tell them, and then help them walk through the steps of how you can access this. And that's the other highlight, I think, of this case study, is that the homeowner talks about how easy it was to
Mm-hmm.
apply.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as a professional that's worked through a lot of energy efficiency programs, sometimes the bar is really high in terms of application and information and paperwork. And it was really cool to see that the homeowner did not have to, the level of effort she needed to expend to take advantage of the program was really low.
Yeah, I mean, it can be really intimidating, right? If you're not familiar with the subject matter, I mean, or familiar with, you kind of maybe familiar with the benefits of it, but you just don't know the actual steps to take. So that's
Yeah,
awesome to hear that it was very easy. It's feasible. It's possible.
it is possible. Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Do you know, like, or maybe, we can research this. The Illinois Solar for All is how the turnaround time was from the time that the Dubois family applied to the time they got their panels.
I don't know that, but I'm happy to find out. I
Okay.
do know that there is a set of approved vendors on the Illinois Solar for All website, so you have to go through an approved vendor. Um, but as far as like how long it took her to go from A to B, we'll find out, and I'll get back to you with that information.
Okay, yeah, that'll also be great to know and to share with the audience, because this is what designing healthy environments is about, is not just to talk about the resources and technology, but also educate, you know, this is possible for us to do. So we can start as human citizens, right, to reduce the carbon emissions, however way we can.
Yes, I love that. Human citizens. I'm going to steal that.
That's, I mean, we
I
are.
love it.
And so, I mean, these times are, what is the word you've been using? It's just interesting, like how everything in our lives is just merged for now. And here in the US, we've been sheltered in place since March of this year
Yeah.
because of a pandemic, because of civil unrest, because of climate, you know, and now all of those two things have really made it apparent how climate change has impacted in a positive way because we're sheltered in place, but also let's realize we are pausing, we are forced to be paused and think about our behaviors for,
Yes.
you know, what do you think about, how have you been, Sandra, and all of these things? A
Well,
loaded
it
question.
it is. It's just it's different. You know, I think a first for most of us, all of us, honestly, have never been in a pandemic. It's just um, it's just different. And I think for me, I just have to, it's one moment, one day, 1 minute at a time. And you kind of
Yeah.
just, I have to just accept my space and my spot and think about how I can still be most effective in pushing um, the messaging around reducing our carbon footprint and becoming more sustainable. And it's, you know, on the positive note, I think
Mhm.
because we've had a chance to pause, I've been able to get involved in some broader discussions about integrating renewable energy and equity. I don't know if that would have happened if I was still like traveling at a hectic pace and focusing on other things. So that kind of, this is a really interesting story about working with Microsoft.
Mhm.
Um, and this actually happened last year at Greenbuild. I was talking to a couple of folks about how we could integrate equity into renewable energy procurement.
Mhm.
And, you know, we talked about it at Greenbuild and kind of went our own separate ways. And around the time that COVID was starting to take over the United States, we had planned to convene a large meeting out in Washington, D.C. Well, travel was banned, so we had to regroup and have this collaborative discussion online to talk through how do you integrate equity
Mhm.
into a renewable energy procurement process for Microsoft specifically.
Mhm.
Um, Microsoft has pretty like huge goals. They want to be, I think, 100% carbon neutral by 2025. I think that's right. Yeah, 100% renewable energy by 2025. Um, and they wanted to really think through the equity piece. So Emerald Cities got involved, NAACP, and a few other organizations and individuals got together to brainstorm around this. And kind of my theme was um, the the developer contractor piece. How do we diversify? How do we bring in more diverse developers, solar developers, and folks that are contractors in this space? Because that is how you build wealth. And I'm a proponent of workforce development. I do think we need to have a more diverse workforce, but we also need to have a more diverse contractor network
Mhm.
for energy, energy efficiency, solar energy. Like the whole thing needs to be diversified. And that was kind of my theme in this discussion with Microsoft. And I'll talk about some of the other outcomes in a second. So we started to talk through like the contracting process. What are you writing in your contracts? And standard contracts, if if you're working for a large corporation, they usually have a set aside for a diverse contractor. 10%, 15, 25%, whatever, which is fine, but it doesn't really get to building a foundation for wealth creation. So my suggestion, in addition to this carve out, set aside, whatever you want to call it, is to require the larger developers that are not diverse to build some kind of support network to bring in diverse developers or contractors that are interested in learning more and help them build their business around renewable energy. And that actually got some traction. So I think Microsoft is taking baby steps, but they did modify their contract. And I think they're working through how they integrate that type of equity and wealth building for diverse communities in their contracting process.
Mhm.
They also partnered, and this I just found out, this is news to me, they partnered with a group called Sol Systems. And what they're going to do with them is develop a portfolio of 500,000 or 500 megawatts of solar energy projects in under-resourced communities throughout the US, working with local leaders, minority and women-owned businesses. And I can send you the press release so you can post that too. But it
Okay.
was really, really gratifying to see that Microsoft is taking our suggestions and turning it into like real work. Um, but yeah, it's awesome. So they're going to invest $50 million in grants and investments that support educational programs, jobs and career training, habitat restoration, and programs that lead to clean energy and energy efficiency access for a broader population. So that's an example of what I was able to do since I was quarantined.
Just a major baby step, that's all.
And it's not just me. It just being part of a collaborative that was really focused on helping Microsoft think this through. So, and I couldn't have done it if we weren't on lockdown, really, and really been engaged and thoughtful. So I think that's the bright side of being kind of on lockdown, is you have a chance to think and be reflective.
And the fact that there was an opportunity to work with Microsoft, who's a giant, right,
Giant.
and make transformative change a little bit quicker than your small firms or companies, but they're also a company who are constantly innovating, right? That's technology. So why not innovate in other areas like what you're saying, equity and procurement? I mean, that's something that we can encourage other companies to do. And
Yeah.
right, it's so important for all of us, to have, you know, equity in procurement and clean energy. I mean, why would you want to debate that? It just
Right.
makes sense. And a lot of times, we are comfortable in doing what we have been doing for the last 20 years, right? Or 5 years because it works. But I think because we do have time to think, we can innovate and
Yeah.
and take these major strides. So bravo to you and your team who have done this with Microsoft, and let's see how others take the lead on this.
Yes, it's exciting, and I hope that we can continue to have more conversations about that. And I'm so adamant about diversifying our contractor base, and because I feel like that's how you build wealth. If you have successful Black and brown businesses,
Mhm.
and this industry, the energy efficiency, renewable, it's growing. It's going to continue to grow. And I want to see more Black and brown faces in that landscape. Because there's a lot of wealth that can be generated from that. And not only, I mean,
There.
if you've, and then if you're living in your own community, you're spending that dollar, hopefully, in your own community, and you're increasing the number of times that same dollar circulates in your own community. And all of that effort leads to a healthier neighborhood, a brighter community, and that's just, yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. It's really, really important. It's important because there have been we've just not have had the access or the opportunity to participate at scale, and it's time for that to change.
Yeah, and I love that. And I know that you've done, some pretty amazing work along your way and along your career, right? And I go back to, I've said it before and I'll say it again because it just makes sense. It's just if it feels good, then it's right, It's just when you're in a healthy space and you want it to feel good, you want it to feel comfortable and to be able to move forward. And the same thing goes with equity. It just feels good, right?
It
To be able to
does.
have this resource available for everyone, especially those who need it the most.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, I absolutely. I can't say it any better than you did. Just like that is so important right now. And we're not going to reach it if our utopia or our vision is to have a fully sustainable city of Chicago. Let's just talk about Chicago. You
Mhm.
Everybody has to participate. All 2.5 million people
Mhm.
in Chicago have to have the benefits or the ability to participate. They have to participate. And we still have work to do to get all 2.5 million folks actively participating in the efforts that make us a more sustainable city.
Mhm. What do you see from your perspective? What are the opportunities and challenges in your work?
Um, well, opportunities in my work right now at Elevate, I think is the scaling
Mhm.
of some of the initiatives we're working on. Um, One thing we're working on is figuring out our retrofit package for existing housing stock in the city. Well, it's a partnership with the Department of Energy, the City of Chicago, ComEd, and others. Um, but there, as you know, most of our existing housing stock is brick, not all insulated, or not as insulated as it should be. And our biggest kind of energy drain from that housing stock is just the fact that we're leaking heated air throughout our cold climate, during the winter.
Mhm.
So we're working with NREL too to test different retrofit packages that we could apply to existing housing stock to make it even more energy efficient than it already is, and specifically looking at the infiltration and the insulation.
Mhm.
Um, so that's exciting because we really haven't addressed. I think we're good. We have the technology we need to make our commercial buildings more efficient. And that's another story. We'll talk about that another day. But we really haven't focused on our homes, our residential homes. We can take care of lighting, we can take care of the cooling, but we haven't addressed infiltration, and that's a big piece of it. So I'm excited about that work. And once we figure out the one or two retrofit packages, I think the challenge will be, how do we scale it? How do we cover the cost? Because it's not going to be cheap. So
Mhm.
that's one thing we're working on. Another thing we're working on, we're looking at electrification,
Mhm.
um, because that's another pathway to reducing our carbon footprint. If all of our heating, cooling, lighting, and everything is coming from an electric source, then when we switch to renewable energy, we're not burning coal or gas, right? So we're looking at technologies to help some of the multifamily buildings we work with already uh, electrify them. So for example, looking at air source heat pumps as opposed to gas furnaces,
Mm-hmm.
heat pump water heaters instead of gas water heaters, and thinking through what is required to retrofit a unit so that they're all electric. So those are a couple things, and I think the challenge is going to be scale. How do you, and the questions would be, how do you A, pay for it,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you B, get it to the folks that are the hardest to reach, the Black and Brown communities that we've been talking about? How
Mm-hmm.
do you implement it at scale in all of our communities? I think those are still going to be big challenges for us. And the scaling piece has been a challenge for a while, just because it's pilot programs are not always easy, but it's a easy way to test a concept. But the scaling piece is challenging. And the other piece is we also have to have the political will to pull the trigger on
Yeah.
spending the money. And this Chris Wheat, I was on a webinar with Chris Wheat, my predecessor as
Mm-hmm.
CSO, and that was a thing that he said, and it's true. We
Yeah.
have to have the political will to be willing to pull the trigger and spend the money to make this happen. And as a human citizen, it's our job to have the political will to do that.
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I watched that as well, and that was the only thing I wrote down is like because it makes sense, you know, we do have the tools and the resources, and he said that he's like we have the tools and the resources. It's just the political will that we need to take, you know. You know
Yeah.
that's part of like our opportunities to lead, right? We are in voting season, right?
Yes.
You know, that's where we as human citizens, as you know, a lot of us here who are able to vote, we should vote. um, that's an opportunity to lead. What are other opportunities to lead for those of us in the design industry that you see, um,
Hmm.
share?
Um, yeah. Oh man, so I think having forums like you're doing right now, Alicia, is a great way to lead. I think a lot of the leadership will be should look like communication and forethought and being an advocate for inclusivity for communities that have not been at the table. I think this is, and we have to have more and more folks in the design and engineering communities kind of
Mhm.
take that stance. I mean, you're technically proficient. You know what you're doing. You're solid in your career. Now is the time to shift to advocacy, I think. And be involved. Like, you know, your aldermen you can pick up the phone today right now and talk to your alderman about your concerns around sustainability, whether it be waste, energy, recycling, water, buildings. Your alderman is your connection to the city of Chicago and how policies get shaped. And anyone can pick up the phone or even go meet with their alderman and share their concerns and then, you know, collaborate uh, in problem solving. Like you
Mhm.
can be that voice. We can all be that voice. It's a very powerful tool. And I would like to see us use it more often. And I think as the design community and engineering community and folks that are focused on sustainability and reducing our carbon footprint, the more we pick up the phone or the more we go meet with our aldermen, the more that's going to be kind of top of their mind. And if we're all doing that and pushing on that lever, I think you'll see um, encouraging policies or supportive policies come out of the process. So I
Mhm.
think that's something that we can all do.
Right. Yeah, that's something we can definitely do. And I would say our state representative too. I mean, we could
Yes.
pick up the phone and call them too. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very feasible opportunity there for all of us to continue on. Yeah.
And we've seen those examples with the Future Energy Jobs Act.
Mhm.
And now the Clean Energy Jobs Act is being shaped. Hopefully it'll pass soon. But that's a key example of how our professional communities can be involved in shaping policy.
Mhm. So with that said, I wanted to ask you, like, where do you see renewable programs going in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a big question. Um, so I would say that, building on the Future Energy Jobs Act and hopefully the language in the Clean Energy Jobs Act will give us a foundation for continuing to push for renewable energy to be available to everyone, all communities and all people. I think that's really important. Um, and I'm optimistic that there will be more folks at the table, folks that were not traditionally included, to talk about what renewable energy looks like in their communities. I'm optimistic that we will be looking at a more diverse developer pool and a more diverse contractor pool. So I think over the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of work will, and these are my a lot of work will have to happen around building the support networks that get us to that diversity. And I
Mhm.
feel like there's enough momentum just given the uprisings and the heightened awareness of the reality that Black and Brown folks have been excluded and they're brutalized over decades,
Mhm.
that because of that awareness, I think there's going to be more interest in committing to building those support networks that will help us build wealth and generate wealth in our own communities. So I think the next 5 to 10 years is going to be a building period for us, but it's going to be really important that we keep the momentum going because it's really easy to check the box on the Clean Energy Jobs Act, for instance, to say, okay, we got that done, on to the next crisis. And I think we have to be very diligent about staying focused and maintaining momentum and reminding folks that we're not, the vision is, we're not there yet. Um, so I feel like it's going to be a building time over the next 5 to 10 years.
Need to measure and track it, right? And we're here. We're here. We are ready to participate. We're ready to be at the table. And I mean, this is a huge takeaway for me this morning is to really think about and advocate for that equity and procurement. I mean, it just has to happen on so many levels and so many areas because it just feels better.
It does. It just feels better. And it's going to lead directly to healthy communities, healthy neighborhoods. Um, one thing I like to just think about is when I ask myself, what does a equitable neighborhood look like? What I see is healthy buildings, trees, grass, businesses, and then the people are walking through the neighborhood. They are Black and brown and white, and they have dogs and they have kids. I mean, it's just like, that's the vision I see
Mhm.
for everyone.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and as as architects, we call ourselves the pollinators of the built environment, and we I believe that every person has a right to a space that brings them joy.
Mm,
Everyone
yeah.
feel good in their space and feel happy and safe and healthy. So this is what we are working towards every day, and advocating for that, and having people like you on designing healthy environments helps our mission. So thank you so much for all of the work that you have done, that you're doing, and you will continue to do. I know that it's a passion of yours. Mhm.
It is. And you know, talking about joy, this work brings me joy. I get excited about it. I'm passionate about it. Some days I'm angry about it because
Mhm.
someone's not being included. But yeah, it feels good to work in this stream. It definitely does. Yeah.
Yeah. So one last question. If you could share, anything that you enjoy reading, like is there a favorite book that you have, or a journal that we could all keep up on this subject matter? What would it be?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm turning around. So I don't know if you can see it. It's not going to show up. It's so Carbon Drawdown. It's
Okay. Mm-hmm.
by Paul Hawken.
Mm-hmm.
Is a book I hang on to often, you know, and just kind of page through it because it reminds me of all of the elements that go into drawing down carbon. And the thing that I just love to come back to this, something as simple as educating girls.
Well, oh, that's my favorite too. I'm just like, how obvious. I mean,
How obvious, right? Like something as simple as that, educating girls can reduce our carbon footprint. And so you know, it's a great kind of resource for me. It's also kind of just a touch point for inspiration that reminds me of why I do this.
Mhm.
Um, and it also reminds me that it's not one thing, it's many elements that will get us to, so you've got educating girls, but then you also have like getting rid of refrigerants, or you know, changing to refrigerants that aren't harmful to the environment. So there's quite a spectrum there. But it all needs, we have to all be doing something. And that's what the book reminds me of
Yeah.
when I look at it.
It's a great choice. I mean, I have that as well, and I refer to it and look, and page through it every now and then. But that was one of my favorites too. Educating girls. It's like it's
Hello.
so obvious, and it's just his 100 solutions to start reducing, carbon, right? And so actually that's one of my goals, is to have them on designing healthy environments, because
Oh.
I just enjoy hearing him speak. He was at the Carbon Drawdown Conference in Chicago last year,
Mhm.
and in when was it, a couple of months ago, I heard him speak on another webinar. It was a panel talk, and the talk was about the climate change, and
Mhm.
there were very well-known speakers on this talk, and the talk began, with introductions, and then the first question, was asked about, carbon reductions. And Paul Hawken, he's just very aware of like connecting all the dots, and
Yeah.
we're all impacted. And he just like set the tone of the talk and says, well, let's just recognize what's happening in our country right now, and with the Black Lives Matter movement. And he mentioned George Floyd, and took it in that direction. I was like, thank you, Paul Hawken. This is not just about not just about climate change, but all of this is, connected. All of, our behavior. And it's just like he I was so appreciative of that moment, because I know a lot of
Yes.
people were watching, and it was just great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see that talk. The other thing I like about Paul is his concept around the circular economy,
Hmm.
and the idea that we have to think through everything we make, consume, whatever, there's a life cycle. and how do we make that like a closed loop? So we know how we create it and we know how we dispose of it. And that's for everything. And I'm so glad you brought up, you know, how he can connect the dots, because
Mhm.
food is another crucial issue around sustainability, access to food. And we have a lot of food deserts in the city of Chicago, and that is not sustainable.
Mhm.
Um, and I would like to see, as design, you know, the design community think through how, as we're building new neighborhoods or redeveloping areas, that we're building that, you know, the food, bringing healthy food to people on a daily basis. How do we do that, and how do we make it affordable? Because that's really, it's it's really important. And
Yeah.
some of the work I do, when we weren't able to be outside, is I'm a big gardener, and I love to teach folks how to garden so that they can feed themselves,
Mhm.
and teach them how to cook healthy food. So uh, just that, the food thing is a big deal for me, and I think for the city of Chicago, and how we make sure that all of our citizens have access to healthy food.
Yeah,
um,
that's another great point. And I mean, at APMonarch, we're working on a prototype for a single family home that's
mhm.
affordable, and that it is a closed loop. And we call it the resilient house, the living organism house. And so, in a times of a pandemic, what do you do in a time where you cannot go out? You know, you want to
Mhm.
safe, you want to see your family members, you want to continue eating healthy or have access to that food. So we're working on a prototype, so stay tuned. We are very
Ooh,
excited.
very exciting! Yay!
And we'll get there. But thank you so much, Sandra, for this talk. Yeah, again, thank you for your work.
Thank you, Alicia.
And have
This- Thank you for having me, and this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for thinking of me. This is amazing to be able to be sharing the screen with you today. And I look forward to all the work that we're going to do in the future.
yes, me too.
Yes.
Have a
And as
wonderful.
you're thinking about that single family home, let me know if you need help finding a place to build it, because I could probably help you with that.
Okay, yes, then we will get on the phone after this.
Okay. Oh, sending you big hugs. Thank
Yeah,
you.
same here. Have a healthy week and
All right.
tuned everyone. If you have somebody you want to, recommend for the talk, please, add their name on the comment line and we will reach out. Have a healthy
Thank
week.
you.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.